Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Daniel Collison, who's the Managing Partner at Advice2Advisors. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hey, I am doing great. Looking forward to learning from you. And I always like to get us started off with learning about your story. So give us a little bit of your background and how did you get into the financial services industry?
Sure. Well, it's been 35 years actually, as of this year. And I've got degrees in political science and history, so I have no right to be in financial services. But I fell into it, luckily. Once I got going in it, I loved it. So I built a practice. I became a certified financial planner, a trust and estate practitioner. I got into the management side. So I was hiring and training financial advisors for almost 2 decades. And ultimately, I sold my practice and I split off and set up with my business partner, Advice2Advisors, which is a coaching and training firm for financial advisors only.
Neat. And that's a really distinct, I'm sure you can pull some of the methodologies out and apply it to any industry, but you went so far as to say, let's just focus on advisors. So what is it that you help them with? What is the focus? Is it, hiring, firing, growing their agency? What is the focus?
Yeah, the focus is absolutely growth. So we say we'll work with any advisor of any tenure as long as they're looking for growth within their business. And as common sense as that might sound, not all advisors are actually looking to grow their business. They're quite happy with where they're at. So it doesn't include everyone, but certainly the growth oriented, we're happy to work with.
That is a good point, because there are some times I will talk to a financial advisor and they don't even know which end is up. They're just going, 1,000 miles an hour. And that person would not need help with growth. They would need help with other things, managing or scaling or things, or not scaling, but, operations. So I really think that growth is a huge driver when you're working with your clients. What is the first place in the realm of growth that you're focusing on?
Well, we look at 3 different aspects of what financial advisors really need to encompass to become top producers. So the first is the mindset itself, and which flows right into a growth mindset. So ensuring that these advisors actually believe they have the capabilities to grow to the level they want to, and then understanding and learning how to go about doing it, which we base really all of our training and coaching comes from what top producers have done over the years to get to where they actually are.
Kind of like, success leaves clues. So if a top producer is doing these core things, then you should probably be doing them in your own way. I mean, maybe different flourishes or different ways that you're approaching it. But what are the main pillars that you are working with your clients on?
So we look at, as I say, first of all, the confident mindset. We look at 4 different elements within that, which is, as I said, the growth mindset, how to harness their own intrinsic motivation. We talk about goal setting and looking at how the best of the best actually set their business goals. And then we talk to grit, which is really the passion and perseverance for long-term goals. So that's the confident mindset. Then we talk to the confident business structure, which all top producers have. So we really work with advisors on building out a holistic approach to their advice, which means they're going to work with what we call our personal CFO model, or personal chief financial officers model, which really does encompass using experts outside or inside your firm that can help with the areas of expertise that you might not be really working within, whether it's family law, estate planning, tax, whatever it might be. We get them to focus on an ideal client profile, so they actually limit who they're going to work with so that they can become experts to those individuals. We talk about how they market with a unique value proposition, which talks to who they work with, why they work with them, how they do the work they do. In other words, the processes that they use within their advice, and then ultimately really all about ensuring that those clients know they've got the person they want to be working with them. And then finally, within that confident business structure is the operational playbooks. We know that top producers all document what it is they and their teams do. And the more documented, the better and easier the practice runs. And a lot of what we talk about is simplicity, because top producers have to make things simple so that they can actually get the work done. And then the final area that we work on is what we call confident growth, or a confident growth plan. So we look at business strategies, a marketing plan, and then what we call our prospecting dashboard, which is 4 different methodologies that we see top producers using, being they go with conscious referability. So they actively seek out referrals without asking for those referrals, but they do get targeted introductions to their ideal client profiles. They build personal networking groups, again, with experts that also focus on the same type of clients that they work with. And then finally, working on seminars or webinars and targeted to, again, their ideal clients. And finally, having a succession plan in place. And that really flows into Stephen Covey's concept of begin with the end in mind. So if you know how you want your business to end up, you just backtrack and work towards it, really deconstruct what you're looking to get to, and then set your goals appropriately step by step to get there.
So all that is about a 2-day process, right? Everyone just checks the box, gets it, and they implement it right away. So no, that's a mouthful, right? So, I mean, it's really amazing. And that is quite the playbook and blueprint. One of the things that jump out at me when you were mentioning knowing your ideal clients and actually limiting your focus to just those ideal clients, I would suspect that when we think about that word mindset that you've used all throughout each of these sections, that becomes a struggle and a hurdle to get over for some, because you feel like I'm in growth mode. I check the box and I realize I need to have that ideal client, which is whatever that looks like. But limiting, wait a minute, I'm trying to grow. What do you mean growth and limit is like having my foot on the gas and the brake at the same time? What do you do with an advisor that feels like that's a limiting mindset?
Yeah, and you've nailed that perfectly, Mike, because that tends to be the one element that the vast majority of advisors struggle with, because they do see it as a limiting factor. But the reality is, so long as you've got the numbers within your geographic or licensing location, as long as let's say you're dealing with business owners or retirees, so long as there are enough of those individuals in your area that you can work with, the fact that you focus, that you really put that huge focus on working towards those individuals means that you do become the expert, you become more referable to them. And people want to work with experts. Yeah. So, I mean, I found this out in my own practice. I decided very early on that I was going to work with retirees. And I declared I'm a retirement specialist, and I worked very hard, studied very hard to become an expert in that area. And it just brought me more business than I could ever have done in any other way. So it works. We see most top producers in the industry do focus, or at least tend to focus on one type of client. It doesn't mean they won't take on some outside, but they market and they prospect exclusively to that ideal client profile.
Well, I think that once you kind of trust the process and take that step forward. You see one or two times where it actually comes out the way you just described it. It becomes easier. So as an example, working with retirees, it's not like you're going to stiff arm someone that comes to you and says, oh, I'm not a retiree or pre-retiree just yet, but can you help me? You're not going to say no, because you might have a person in their, early 60s that would fit your ideal client that you're working with, and they are so pleased with your service, they're introducing you to their son or daughter who's in their whatever 30s. You're not going to turn them down, but that's going to come because you did such a good job for your true ideal client that they are mentioning it. You're just not going to have 19 bullet points on your website of here's who we serve, because as the great book Building a Story Brand says by Donald Miller, when you confuse, you lose. So I think keeping it dialed in so tight is really important.
Absolutely true. And I always equate it to those restaurants where, they say we specialize in, Italian, Greek, Chinese, Mediterranean, and you start to see this. There is no specialty, in other words. So you don't want to be that advisor that has no specialty, because that is, in fact, what the majority of advisors are. You become nebulous, and your clients can't point to your specialized knowledge. Whereas if you do declare that ideal client profile, you become so much more referable. Everything becomes easier. And as you said, Mike, the processes are easier, and you don't have to keep building new processes for every different type of client that you get.
Yeah. And you learn the lingo, you learn the hot buttons and words that that resonate with your target audience, and then you find where they congregate online, offline, and you find the strategic alliances that already have those ideal clients in their database, and you can work to do co-branded. So it all plays together that way, and that's not to say that you can't down the road hire a business manager for your firm that goes, okay, now I want you to go after a whole different ideal client, and then they're building something out. But you need to have that blueprint, that playbook for the one ideal client to know that you can go cookie cutter template, boom, here's what works here. Now we're just going to duplicate it in this next, vertical.
Absolutely. And that's what makes scaling so possible in our business.
Yeah. So, I know that there's a lot of aspects of doing the business. You've got to get the client, you've got to get their attention, you've got to sell them. So there's marketing and sales. And then there's the actual, let's give the great advice and manage their money and make the recommendations. So there's a lot of hats that an advisor wears. And many times at the beginning part of, scaling their agency, it's just them and maybe one other person. What do you find that you're giving your clients good advice on when it comes to marketing and prospecting, to keep that going all the time? Because if you get a handful of clients in and then you have to serve them, then now you're letting the balls drop from marketing and prospecting, and then you got to fire that engine back up at some point.
Yeah, and that's what we actually see. And when you look across the industry, that Pareto rule, that 80-20 rule holds very true. As a branch manager, a former branch manager, I used to look at all my advisors' numbers, and it was never more than 5% off. That 20% of the advisors produced about 80% of the revenue. And it is because of the focus that they take on all aspects of the business. And when you mention marketing, we really talk a lot of the duality of client acquisition, in that we like to split out the difference between marketing and prospecting. And what we say marketing is, and really the easiest way to think of it, is that old billboard. You'd have your face up, your phone number, and your services up on that billboard. Obviously, you don't see that much today, but you do see a lot of social media and such. So we suggest that marketing is you, the advisor, putting out your unique value proposition. Again, that's who you work with, why you work with them, how you work with them, and what you give to them, which usually is clarity and comfort around their finances. So that's your marketing, putting that out. And you could have different forms of media you're using, word of mouth, as I mentioned, social media. There is print. It starts to get a little more costly. The big producers, quite often, depending on their locations, could be into radio or even television, but again, very costly. But you've got that marketing aspect. So you're always putting out your unique value proposition to your ideal client profile. But then there's the prospecting. And this is the aspect of the business that falls off for that 80% of advisors. They work so hard getting into the business and then actually being able to stay. And I know when I got into the business, because I had no experience, I was prospecting continuously for about 4 years. I had to go hard just to survive. And a lot of advisors, have that experience. But once they get to a comfortable position, they let their foot off that prospecting gas pedal and they look at marketing and let it kind of take over. And what we're suggesting is, well, marketing alone doesn't give you the same growth that marketing and prospecting. And prospecting are those 4 methodologies I mentioned: the conscious referability, targeted introductions, building a personal networking group, and targeted seminars or webinars. Those are the top. Obviously, there's a lot of different ones, but these are the ones we see top producers using. So unfortunately, the vast majority of advisors, get to that point. They're making a good, livable income, and they just stop prospecting, and they let marketing do the little bit that gets them out to the public. But again, it's not what the top producers do. They're always at both, that duality of the combined marketing and prospecting. And prospecting is where you're actually talking to a person with the intentions of letting them know what you do, so that you can in fact sit down with them and look at their financial situation and see if you can help them with it.
Yep.
So
if you
that duality is so critical.
It is. And I think that in one sense, marketing could be sitting on your front porch with a megaphone going, "Do you need financial advice?" And that's, marketing, but it's just broad and too watered down. But in some sense, if you're standing in front of, maybe a group of people that are in your ideal market, and with that same megaphone and asking that question, now that's targeted marketing, but is that welcomed? Is that intrusive? So now you start getting these nuances of, okay, if I know who my true ideal client is, prospect is, and I want to get my message out there, what's the best way to do it without being obnoxious? Well, maybe getting an introduction, not referral, but an introduction. So now let's work in with those nuances and give them something to talk about. Like, how can you do such a great job for someone that the client goes, "Hey, Dan is my guy, and he just really does a great job. You ought to, if you ever have any questions about preparing for retirement, you ought to just give him a call, because, he was just interviewed on, check this interview out. He's really, really great." But getting those ambassadors out there talking about you, so that that's marketing, but it's targeted marketing, and it's prospecting as well.
Yeah, totally.
And without feeling, because now it's like, okay, well, what do I say to my clients to be able to get them well, now you feel like you're imposing on them. So it's this nuance of, hey, listen, I'm here. I don't spend a lot of money on ads and magazine art advertisements, because I want to focus on you, the client. So, hey, do me a favor when you're talking with someone, whatever the scripting is, but it's always keeping that on the forefront of your mind, to be asking for those introductions. And I think that becomes hard. But yet, if you simplify it down into, okay, my goal this week is to get to ask that question 3 times of clients or strategic alliances, and out of those 3, maybe I'm going to get 1 introduction. So, okay, maybe the next week I'm going to bump it to 4. But it's kind of having those metrics. You got to have something, because if you don't have that kind of thing going, it doesn't happen. It
certainly doesn't happen on its own, and that's. Yeah. That's the sad thing about this vast majority of advisors, when they let their foot off that prospecting gas pedal. That, sure, they're making a good living, but are they thriving? Are they getting the pleasure out of building that big, powerful business that they probably dreamt of at the beginning of their careers? And I've got to say, for the most part, they're not, and they just don't understand how to move from where they are to get to, that top producer or whatever they've decided they want to achieve in their business life.
Well, there's a million and one things that people can be doing, but you've got them boiled down to playbooks and blueprints. And I think that is spectacular. So Dan, if someone is listening to this wondering, hey, can you give me a little bit of an insight on how I can move forward in my growth? What's the best way they can learn more and also reach out and connect with you?
Sure. They can get a hold of us at Advice2Advisors.com. My second book is coming out next month. It's called Building Bigger and Better: Growth Strategies of Top Producing Advisors. And it's about these three confidences that we've just spoken about. So they can go to the website. In a month, the book will be out. So all that information is there for the taking.
Excellent. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Well, likewise, Mike. Thanks very much for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.